Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of House of the Dragon episode 4, King of the Narrow Sea. Now, we actually see this episode is about a year time jump, and we open with Rhaenyra holding the necklace Daemon gave her, thinking about Daemon. And this episode is a lot of relationship building, and there's a lot of fascinating stuff going on. Definitely another one you got to watch twice because there's a lot of dialogue you got to kind of keep up with here. That's important. And not just dialogue, but a lot of visual cues that they're giving us in this episode I'm going to break down. But we see there's this tour that Rhaenyra is on about finding who is going to be her husband here, and she's rejecting everybody left and right. We get a little humorous scene here where first it's this old man that courts her. She's like, he would know my grandma, and then she gets a child, and that child gets called out by another man, and they fight, and he ends up killing that other guy, and this is all over Rhaenyra. And when she's on her way to King's Landing, I love the little detail here with Daemon. Of course, him coming on his dragon, he knocks into the ship. That's just so Daemon. And Daemon comes in now with a crown, and he drops a sword there like a mic drop, and he's like, add this to the throne, he says to King Viserys. This is where we see Rhaenyra smirks at her bad boy uncle, as weird as that sounds, because this episode we are fully leaning into Targaryen incest. Now we see Daemon has a haircut here, but he says that he's been given this crown, King of the Narrow Sea, and he has the Stepstones, but he is giving this to the king, that he is the true king, and they hug. But like we know, Daemon always has ulterior motives. Now, where this episode shined for me the most was in the differences of Alicent's life at this point and Rhaenyra's life, and how they try to keep peace with each other and love each other as friends, but there's so many things that make this almost impossible. So we see that Alicent, obviously it's been a year, so she's no longer pregnant, and she actually had a baby girl. They show that really quick in the episode. And when Alicent and Rhaenyra are talking about their current situations, Rhaenyra says how romantic it must be to get imprisoned in a castle and squeeze out heirs. Not even realizing this is really not the best thing for Alicent to hear at this moment, because that's exactly what Alicent is going through. And we also see how lonely Alicent is, her saying that she doesn't have many friends right now, and she misses being just Lady Alicent, and everyone just sees her as the queen. And it's interesting because at the beginning of this episode, they're closer than we last saw them. So there is, in this year happening, more understanding of each other. So where stuff starts to get weird with Rhaenyra and Daemon, Rhaenyra starts to call out Damon, saying, you can just come here to taunt my dad. What is the real plan here? But she says she's noticed he's matured from his adventures. And he says, you've matured yourself these past 4 years. But he encourages her not to live in fear. Daemon is the ultimate rebel, and he's really encouraging Rhaenyra's rebel, mostly careless side about the politics of and repercussions of what they're doing. And also him saying that she's matured is a huge line. It's already giving you an inkling to what Daemon is thinking about with Rhaenyra, and now that she is a woman, he has got other motives with Rhaenyra. Now, also, we learn that Otto tells Viserys that Corlys plans to wed his daughter to the Sea Lord of Braavos' son. This would make House Valyrian an alliance with the Free Cities, which just give them so much power, and this is stuff Viserys has been warned about, and consequences of him not marrying Corlys' daughter himself. And remember, it only makes the suggestion he had last episode even make more sense for Rhaenyra to marry the Sea Snake's son. And this is just an awkward moment for Rhaenyra because she's sitting there, because it's just putting more pressure on her and everyone's looking at her. So we see now Rhaenyra in her bedroom is left this Oliver Twist disguise from Daemon, and also points on a map to a secret exit in a room she didn't even know about. So this excites her from the start. And her being in her Oliver Twist disguise, and then you got Daemon in this hooded disguise, kind of putting in the world that these are celebrities when they go out in the town. They can't just walk and enjoy a normal night without getting recognized. So it reminded me of that, and them trying to just live a normal life and have fun. But we see they're watching a play in classic Game of Thrones fashion that's talking about what's going on and mocking the situation, and that it's the story of the king, the daughter, and the young Aegon fighting for the throne and being the heir. And the town folk all laughs at the moment of talk of a woman on the throne, which is big. And Rhaenyra kind of scoffs at it and just says, oh, who cares what they think? But that's an important line Daemon says, where if you plan to roll one day, that is going to be more important than you think, the opinions of the town folk. So I thought that was a nice little foreshadowing line for sure. And I love the juxtaposition here, because while these scenes are happening with Rhaenyra kind of having fun running through town with Daemon, she's such a free spirit. You see it's juxtaposed with a miserable night of Alicent. Like, this is a classic night for Alicent we're seeing from her perspective, which I thought was really effective, because it starts with her cleaning up Viserys in his bath. Then she sleeps in a separate room from Viserys, but is called to in the middle of the night, woken up just to have sex with him. And we also see in this moment Viserys has those scars we saw in episode 1 is spreading even more now on his back. And poor Alicent, you really feel for her. She's just looking up at the ceiling during this, and he's kind of nudging her to look at him. And what I noticed, which was interesting, is when they're done having sex, she looks up and sees a rat. Now, this is important because when Rhaenyra was running out of the castle, she also passed a couple rats, and to me it's just showing that this is the start of the decay of the House of the Dragon, that these rats are starting to feast now and things are starting to get muddy. Also, if you notice, once they're in the pleasure house, Daemon and Rhaenyra, Daemon immediately takes the Oliver Twist hat off of Rhaenyra, and that's when you knew he had ulterior motives here with Rhaenyra. And he says, this is a place where people take what they want. Effing is a pleasure for woman as it is the man. And he says, a marriage is a duty, but it doesn't stop us from doing what we want. Effing who we want. So this is where it commences the Targaryen incest. But they don't end up boning. But what's important here is that the little boy is outside watching them run out of this place. But what does Rhaenyra do? What does she also experience and learn from Daemon here? Is she goes back home and takes what she wants, which is Kristen Cole. And I just got to give a shout out again to Millie Alcock here. She plays Innocence brilliantly throughout this sequence with Kristen Cole. And it's risky business for Kristen Cole leaving his post, protecting the princess, and even just doing sexual things with the princess. And he knows that, so he has a lot of pausing here. And I also thought what was kind of hysterical was seeing how long it takes to take a knight's armor off before doing it. Total mood killer for sure. And I really thought when this was happening that Kristen Cole was just going to be doomed by the end of this episode doing this. I was like, oh man, he's screwed. But they do it. It's this very nice romantic scene, and really brought up by the music here and how much we already knew that Rhaenyra was in love with Kristen Cole, and that's kind of happening here. It's her losing her virginity to him as well. So what happens is Otto's woke in the middle of the night. He's brought word from this little boy who watched him leave, and he's a messenger for the White Worm, who is Mysaria. And then it cuts to her paying this messenger, and she has Daemon here. So they're not on good terms. And she's now working with Otto, which is crazy because 2 episodes ago, Otto was calling her a whore like crazy. So Otto's playing the game here and saw at some point there was a rift between her and Daemon, and she is one of his best spies. And there's a big moment with Otto because we see he is a big choice to make, where if he's going to tell the king this information, it can advance his house, get what he wants, with the heir being Aegon, take those steps, but it could also get him killed or fired. But he ends up telling him, and he tells this with Alicent overhearing, which is huge that she was in the room and he didn't know that. But the big thing about this information is they think that Daemon and Rhaenyra actually had sex, which they did not. And what's interesting is there really is no way this looks good to Viserys that Otto was spying on his daughter. That's just not a good look to gain trust, and why he kind of made the decision he made at the end of the day. There's other reasons to his decision with getting rid of Otto as the hand, but that was a big part, definitely, subconsciously at least. And it gets testy here between Alicent and Rhaenyra when Alicent tells Rhaenyra what she heard. And she says, you Targaryens do have queer customs, and you know Daemon certainly has no limits. So this is just reminding us, too, of the image of Targaryens, and they're known for things like incest in the realm. And she's even saying, my father's no gossip, and that's a big thing. Otto isn't a little finger in that sense, just stirring the pot to stir the pot. Otto has reliable sources. He's not going to just make up stuff to make up stuff. He plays the game in a way that's secretive, but not as gossipy. And this really puts Alicent in the worst spot. This is her best friend here, where bad rumors being made about her that's kind of not a rumor, and her father here, who can get in big trouble for if he's lying and making this up. But see, Rhaenyra swears on the memory of her mother that Daemon never touched her, which I believe convinced Alicent at the end of the day here that Rhaenyra wasn't lying. But Alicent's right and says to Rhaenyra it's still risky for her to even been in that situation. If a lord thinks you were Sully, it would ruin everything. And this is what Viserys is getting at with Rhaenyra, where he's like, truth doesn't matter here. It's perspective. It makes you look bad. It makes me look bad. And she even says, if this was a man, no one would blink an eye. And Viserys is like, no, you're totally right. But you're not a man. You're a woman here. So this is just bad politically. This looks bad. Now, what's fascinating is when Viserys confronts Damon here, Damon just admits it. He's like, better her first experience be with me than some whore. But he's sort of lying because they didn't have sex. And he's like, you have ruined her. What lord, what her now? But this is important. Damon says, who gives a crap what some lord thinks? You are the dragon. Your word is truth and law. This is what Damon's always trying to get out of Viserys, to put his foot down, just use his power more. This is what Damon would be as a king. And Damon's just straight up like, I want Rhaenyra, take her as she is and wed her in the tradition of our house. And that's when Viserys like, but you're already wed. And Damon's like, that didn't stop Aegon the Conqueror from taking a second wife. So Damon, again, where he is traditionalist is in the lore of his house. He takes that as motivation. Like, if they could have done that and they kicked butt, I'm doing it. And he's like, give me Rhaenyra and we'll turn the House of Dragon to its proper glory. And this right now clicks to Viserys. This all comes back to Damon really not even lusting for Rhaenyra, that he just wants the throne. But this is where Alicent says some big things to Viserys here. Like, Rhaenyra is not deceitful. Daemon actually lied to reduce you. So she's giving him the other perspective of the situation. And again, we'll see when Viserys talks to Rhaenyra, he brings up the Song of Fire and Ice and that responsibility she has to protect that secret. And he's like, you know what? You know what your punishment is, Rhaenyra, for being stupid here and getting us both in trouble? He's like, no courtship even. Your wedding, Laenor, Valerian, end of discussion. It's like, this will unite the two most powerful houses in the realm. But this is where Rhaenyra gets her play, because she says, what will you do about that vulture, Otto? This is where she gets in the game, because she's saying, hey, Otto just wants Aegon to be heir here, and he was spying on me. He's trying to destroy me. And she's like, you don't have to have people self-interested on your team. So this is a great point by Rhaenyra. And again, someone telling Viserys, put your foot down here. Be a king. And she says, I will do my duty as heir, and marry Sir Laenor. She gets the political ramifications now of what's happened. But she's like, you need to step up in your place too to fix this as well and take care of Otto. And now it clicks for Viserys what Otto's done with the calculated distraction of Alicent. Took him forever to realize this. And he brings up in the past, when he did become Hand, that this has been his goal forever, that he's not this just hand, that he wants power at the end of the day. But doesn't order Otto to get killed or anything, because he still respects Otto for helping him be a better king and helping him with his son. But he's fired. He's lost his gig. But, you know, Rhaenyra was right that you shouldn't have people that are self-interested on your team here. But there's also the other side of it where Otto is dangerous, and not having him on your team could be risky. So it's kind of trying to find that middle ground. But it's really interesting stuff. And then we end the episode where the Grand Maester brings Rhaenyra the tea, and he gets cut off when mentioning the part of it that, if not brewed properly, could bear unpleasant consequences. But he said he brewed it fine, but that's important. Something bad could happen to Rhaenyra down the road, some kind of side effect from this. And we know, if anything, this is Kristen Cole's baby who they're killing here, not Daemon's. But this means a lot, because you're wondering, is the Grand Maester trustworthy, that he made this tea correctly, or he has ulterior motives? What is he really giving her? And also, this is important because it's also the dad saying to Rhaenyra, he thinks they had sex. He's made his decision with everything to Rhaenyra, but it's also saying to her, like, I still think you did it with Daemon. Take this tea. So that's just fascinating on so many levels, and how it's going to change relationships and what everyone thinks of each other. It's really becoming a game in this episode, relationships. I'm giving this episode a 9. I thought this was really solid. It still was the weakest of the whole show so far, but that's not saying a lot, because I'm still giving it a 9. I still think it's great. But this is an episode you're either in or out to me, I think, and this might turn a lot of people off. It didn't have its big crazy moment in this one, where the other three all had a big moment, especially usually with Daemon and a dragon in some sense. But here we didn't get that. So this is really asking people to be invested in one house, in the Targaryens, at its smaller scale in that sense, which I am appreciating, and I think that's what's making it different from Game of Thrones. But it's asking a lot of people to really be invested in this dialogue-heavy episode. A lot of things happening where I think that can turn people off who want the big event, big action sequence, which is fine. But I'm not one of those people. I'm really enjoying this. So I think this is just setting up some really exciting stuff. So I'm giving this one a 9. I really enjoyed it, but I could totally see why people would be turned off by this episode, maybe not even like it. So I'm interested to see what you guys think about this episode as a whole. And also check out my interview I just did with Graham McTavish, who plays Sir Harold Westerling. It's a really fun time. We talk about the season as a whole and stuff he thinks about the show, so you should really check it out. I'll have that linked at the end here and down below as well. And please, if you subscribe or leave a tip, that helps me in so many ways. You have no idea. You can hit the thanks button below, or just become a subscriber, like I said, or a member, and you can donate. You get exclusive live streams. All this stuff helps me. It's a competitive show, so it'd help in any way, especially just subscribing. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more of me. And I'll see you next time.